So the State of the Union is where the president addresses a joint session of the Congress, basically sharing about the problems in the state of the nations. So Chad and I did the exact same thing with the kayak fishing industry and all of the companies that support it. So this is going to be a fantastic show. Let's go and hop on in.
Who's the best manufacturer out there from the standpoint of, all the factors: growth, marketing, innovating, supporting the community, kind of like that comprehensive health assessment? Who would you say is or might be the best in the game at that? And then I'm going to put you on the spot at the end to say who you think is the worst.
I'll answer it. I get the question a lot, just like you and a lot of other content creators who follow and kind of, share videos about kayak fishing. And everyone's always looking for recommendations, right? Okay, Daren, you're in there, you're doing videos, seeing this kayak, seeing that kayak. And I'm not gonna like tout myself as someone who's like been in and had my hands on and eyes on like a smorgasbord of kayaks like you have, Chad. But I only recommend only a few brands. And so it's going to be, I'm either going to be promoting Bonafide because I own a P127, love it. I like Natives, a few of those. I'm going to throw out Old Town for individuals. And it was Hobie. That's kind of been crossed off my list recently because of a lot of videos and a lot of conversations I've had. I mean, I got my own show, right? So I'm starting to hear different perspectives from people who may cover Hobies more than I do. I just had Alex Foguera on this past Tuesday, right? And he, flips kayaks and he's like the kayak flipping guy. But he had a video out where there were some issues with warranties and hull warranties and doing weld warranties and kind of the brand that they used to have. Like, oh, you never have to worry about it. Even if you sell it to someone else or buy a used one, it's like covered for life and perpetuity. It's starting to crack a little bit, not definitively. Like I haven't read like something from Hobie that said that, but those are the kayaks I typically recommend unless someone's budget is so low. Then I got to go down to like lifetimes and stuff like that, which I really don't like to spend a lot of my time. I'm kind of in it to win it. There's my list.
I'm asking for your opinion on what you would lay your money down for, and you did that. So
yeah.
We'll pick up on the Hobie discussion and the warranty thing when we get into the end of the show, which is the warranty discussion. I think it's probably the most pertinent issue in kayak fishing right now, and I think that it makes sense to make you guys wait till the end of the video to watch that, so you listen to the rest of the nonsense to get there. Right? That's how we do this, Daren. Right? So you let a little bit of the cat out of the bag. So now you almost kind of did both at one time. So who would you consider the worst, right? Are you, what would you say?
I didn't share who I think the worst. Who I think is the worst are the deals, right? That seem too good to be true. And I'm not sure, I'm not going to throw out one name out there, but if you're starting to find like pedal kayaks in the $1,200 to $1,500 range, right? These are too good to be true deals. You're like, oh, I'm looking at this SS127 and I'm also looking at this one and it's $700 cheaper and they look the same. Like, I know they look the same, but brother, sister, you're going to have issues, right? It's going to be a thinner plastic. Your motor drive is not built quality, and you're going to end up upgrading and trying to sell this thing on the secondary market here in about a season. And so it's a lot of those, I don't know, you got, Brooklyn's and Hoodoos. And like I said, I haven't had eyes on these or actually been in them, but I've read enough forums and heard enough feedback. People don't stay in them too long, but they want the power, they want the pedal drive, they want the motor, they want all this stuff that, Bonafide, 3,200, 3,000 plus kayaks or paddle power kayaks, $1,500 kayaks, but they want them for half the price. And it becomes issues.
Well, you said you weren't going to name any names, and then you threw a couple out there. So
I did. I'll throw them out there. I'm allowed to have an opinion, right?
And that's why I asked for it. All right, so I'm going to put myself on the hook for answering the same question you did. I think comprehensively, and everybody knows that I'm affiliated with Bonafide. Everybody knows that when it comes down to the boat that I choose the most, the ones that sponsor my television show in the past, and all that. And I was there for the birth. Luther, who founded the company, is a really close friend of mine. I was in the factory when the ovens went in. I was there for the transition to the merger with Big Adventures and all that kind of stuff. And then it's actually Big Adventures, and specifically Tyler Brown, who's the marketing director, who embraced my idea. I went to him and I said, listen, I know you guys sponsor me, but I feel like I could do a better job of being a better leader, a better advocate for kayak fishing if I was able to pedal, or power all the boats out there. And, I'm always going to come back to Bonafide. It's my favorite. And it's kind of like having a favorite kid. You can say you want all you want, that you don't have favorites, but we have favorites. But that doesn't mean that I don't respect the other brands out there, which is why if I called one company doing it the best, it would be Big Adventures. because that's the combination of Bonafide and Native. I think Bonafide has been flat for 4 or 5 years. The introduction of the river has started that trajectory back in the right direction, and the introduction of the skiff is going to do that. And I think that it would be extra bias of me to base my opinion on Bonafide on where I know it's going versus where it is. I have to say, based on what everybody knows and what's out there in the industry, with the short term that the river's been on the market, that I can't really give a major, grade to Bonafide. Bonafide was flat for 4 or 5 years. Native was relatively flat for 4 or 5 years. I think the Slayer Max 12 was a meh, boat. I think it was like a good boat in application, but there was a few misses in it. But I think the new Titan series, the new stuff that they're doing, especially that Titan X series, is not just a home run. It's one of those home runs where the guy swings and knows so confidently that he hit a home run that he just stands in the batter's box and lingers for an extra few seconds to kind of like put it on the pitcher. Then he kind of flips the bat and just trots down the baseline. It's one of those kind of home runs. It's actually not my cup of tea. That's why I've not used pro anglers and other boats out there on the market for a long time. So if I was to grade a quote unquote company, that'd be Big Adventures. I'd say Big Adventures is one of the best. But if I grade a brand by itself, I would say that Old Town standalone as an individual brand is probably the best in the game right now, because they've hit all of my categories. If you guys don't watch my content, or if you do, you're familiar with the fact that I use this acronym SCRAPE. Before you scrape all your money together, here's the things that you need to think about: stability and standability, comfort, riggability, reliability, affordability, performance, and then everything else. And I base that on years of experience, both in being a marketing guy, helping design boats, knowing what factors go into it, hearing what dealers say the boats have to have, and then also doing really well in retail when I owned Hook One kayak fishing gear, Hook One Outfitters, and interacting with, thousands of customers over the years. And we did that very successfully. So I'm only saying that to quantify that when I think about a boat, a brand, its position in the market, the things that it's doing, I have the benefit of thinking of it more comprehensively than most people, because I'm a participant, angler, pro staffer for some companies. I've been pro staff director for other companies. I've liaisoned with the executive leadership, from the CEOs to the marketing directors to the engineers at most of the major companies out there. And this industry is very incestuous. So it's like musical chairs, where a lot of these guys were at Confluence Outdoor, which is now Pelican International. Then they were at Johnson Outdoors. Then they were at Jackson. Then they were here and there and the other. And so I'm going to tell you that I think that Old Town is probably the best right now, comprehensively, from that balance of stability, comfort, riggability, reliability, affordability, performance, and then that everything else, transportability, weight for what it is, storage, all those other, ability to interact with carts and other things, falls into that everything else category. And so I think that coupled with the fact that they just come out with the EPDL, which, I did a video, I said, is it innovation or mistake? And what I really meant by that was, are they ahead of the power curve? Like, are they bringing out this massive innovation at a time when we're somewhat flat on sales because of that secondary sales market? And we'll talk about that when we get into the state of the industry. So I'm going to give you my top 3 right now. I think it's Big Adventures as a company, but I think it's Old Town as a brand. I think Native is probably number 2 overall, and then I think Bonafide is number 3. You want to call it honorable mention? Honorable mention for me is going to be New Canoe, followed by Crescent, because I think what both of those guys do from servicing their dealers and servicing their market, they might have the best brand loyalty in the game. I think Crescent does a really good job of cultivating that community of buyers, and I think they do a really good job of taking care of their customers, and we'll get to talking about that in warranty. And I think they do a really good job of taking care of their dealers. I think the company that takes better care of the dealers than any brand in the game is New Canoe. New Canoe wears taking care of their dealers on their sleeve. And so, and again, we'll get into that a little bit when we get into the warranty discussion at the end. But those brands are the brands that I think are killing it. Again, brand standalone, probably Old Town. Company, Big Adventures. And then I think that Big Adventures makes that leap because the two together make a number 1, because I think that Native is number 2 and Bonafide's right behind him at number 3. I'm going to split my worst because I'm going to say what you said, and because you said it and you stole my thunder, I got to say something else. So you opted for the easy one, which is the Alibaba brands. Any of the brands out there that you or I could go to Alibaba.com, and I'm actually going to do a video on this, so you guys stay tuned for a video series on starting a kayak company. Once I get over this hump with the financial strain that I'm under with the divorce, probably October, November, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to order a kayak. I'm going to record the entire process, and I'm going to share it with you guys and show you just how easy it is to start what I call a cake decorator brand. You go to the website, you give them a logo, you give them a name. They take the parts and pieces of the popular manufacturers out there that have spent the money on R&D, which is research and development, and then they've created R&C or R&D, which is research and duplicate or research and copy. And it makes my blood boil when I see that stuff, more so than most people, because I know how much work, time, effort, and energy. I know how much money is spent on prototypes. I know how much time is spent on traveling to paddle those prototypes. I know how hard it is to bring those products to market. And so it's a lot like Arctic Coolers when they sit back and let Yeti do all the marketing and Yeti to do all the stuff and all this other stuff. And then they've plowed the field, pulled up the rocks, dug up the roots, and then they want to come in behind them and drop their seed. They can do that because the other work has been done. They can sell it for half price because they're cutting dealers out the loop. They don't have to establish that market. They don't have to build that consumer demand. They just get to come in and copy it and benefit from it. And to me, that's not the American way. And for everybody that purchases those types of products, I hate to say it, but don't America up and talk about how much of a patriot you are, because that is the exact opposite of what we really should be doing. We should be supporting American companies, American brands. The only imported company out there that I think is still doing it really right is Feel Free. You know, Feel Free does import their kayaks, but they own the factory. They work directly with a family that runs the business. They protect their intellectual property, and they invest in innovation. So Feel Free, in my opinion, is an American brand. Even though they don't make the boats here, they're an American company that outsources the building, but it's not an R&C. It's not a research and copy operation. So I would throw all the Alibaba brands into that umbrella, similar to what you said, without calling out any of the names. And I'm going to say this, and it pains me to say it because I'm going to get some blowback. I'm going to get some flack. This is one of those sound bites that's going to end up on Instagram. Chattanooga said this. But the company that I consider a premium company that I think that has regressed the most is Jackson Kayak. And I think that they made three fundamental flaws, and I'm going to address those, and then we'll get into weight limits, the status of the industry, and things like that. Jackson stopped prototype testing as much as they used to. They stopped, I don't want to say they stopped innovating, because they didn't really, but what they did is they got rid of several of their more popular boats and implemented some boats that I think are misses. I think the biggest miss in kayak fishing in the last 5 years is the Jackson Nar.
Yeah.
And it's not because it's a bad boat. It's because it's not the boat that it could be. It's not the boat that it should have been. And it's not the boat that they purported that it was going to be in the build-up to its release. The deck flexing, some of the issues, some of the stuff that it had, there's just a lot of misses in that boat. Getting rid of the big rig, getting rid of the Liska, getting rid of some of those boats, which I'm hearing are now kind of coming back, or dealers can order them in limited quantities, was a little bit, in my opinion, them being tone deaf to the market, tone deaf to the industry. You know, I know that they came out with the Take 2, but the Take 2 doesn't satisfy the big boy boat that the big rig did, right? Telling a big dude, oh, well, just fish the tandem boat and take out one of the seats. That's not a home run. That's not even a dribbler to the mount. And the Take 2, it's, in my opinion, just an oversized version of the U-Pick. So they've got like all this redundancy in the boats that they moved forward with. They put all their eggs in one basket with this Nar, and then the Nar was a miss. And then they got rid of some of their best-selling boats ever. I think the star in the lineup right now is the Coosa X and the Bike. The problem with the Coosa X is, and I'm just going to tell you guys right now, I'll give you a heads up. I was going to do a river series, the RVR 119 versus the Sholey versus the Coosa X. I'm now going to be doing a series of the RVR versus the Sholey, because I think those are the only two true river boats in the game right now, because the Coosa X is so flat bottom and it's so wide that it's a great ATV boat where you can do a little bit of everything. But I wouldn't consider it a river boat, because the bottom's so wide and so flat. If you go around an outside bend in a river, you're going to the outside. There's nothing you can do about it. And in a true river boat, you can lean and edge and ferry across and not get swept into a tree. And so I think the Coosa X is a pretty good river boat for up to the most, once you get past class 2, forget about it. Or if you get into too many switchbacks and too much technical stuff, it's a good beginner riverboat because it is so big and so wide and maneuverable that honestly, through an open, wide rapid, you can just throw your hands up in the air and say "wee" and go right through it. But I also think that gives some people a false sense of security, and then they're going to take that boat out on a more technical river and they're going to get their ass handed to them. So with the Coosa X and the Bite being the shining stars in their lineup right now, think about that. Think about that back from when Jackson had the Coosa HD, they had the Cudas, they had the Big Rig, they had the Kilroys, they had the Liska. I still think to this day, the Liska might be one of the better riverboats that not only Jackson's ever made, but anybody ever made. And so they got rid of that boat. And so I'm a little bit biased because I really love that boat. So I think of the premium brands, let's throw Alibaba out there and say you covered that, and I agree with you. But of the brands that, had an existing level of prominence that have slipped the most, I think it's Jackson. It's sad because I love Jackson as a company. I love what they did in the innovation game. I tried to get a lawn chair style seat through the gate. Drew Gregory and I both were kind of like championing it at the same time. Native Watercraft was actually the first to do it. A lot of people give Jackson credit for it, but Native did it in their Ultimate Series first. And they actually made a seat that goes on a board called the Versa board, which is like their version of a hybrid fishing kayak sup, and it has a 360 swivel seat on it. So a lot of people think they're the first to do it when actually Native was, and Native actually wasn't even the first. The first was actually Diablo Kayaks out of Texas, who basically just took a Larry chair, a travel chair that folds up, and put that on their boat. So truly they were the first stadium seat, lawn chair style seat. But Jackson was the ones that innovated with it. They're the ones that popularized it. They're the ones that put it on an actual mainstream fishing boat, and they were the first to truly embrace fishing specific design. I'm going to give credit where credit's due. Because Jackson did that, everybody else started. Before that, every fishing kayak had to have this like wreck angle to it. That way the dealers can sell it to a wreck person or a fisherman. So we had to make all these compromises, and it would drive you crazy. For example, on the Wilderness Systems Attack, Hans and I designed this badass cockpit. I had this interchangeable little thing in the front. And because of the dealer feedback, we ended up with like a piece of starboard with a hole in it because they said it had to have a drink holder. Like everywhere on your boat's a drink holder. If you got an Algene bottle, just sit it down. If you've got a water bottle, stick it in your backpack, stick it in your crate, stick it in the tank well. You don't have to have a hole to put it in. But because dealers said, oh no, the first question that all of our paddlers ask is, where's the drink holder? Fishermen, our drink holder is at the end of our arm. It's called our hand. And then every manufacturer out there makes a drink holder. Yak Attack makes one, Ram makes one, Yak Gadget makes one, insert company name here. So if you want a drink holder, you can put it on there. You don't have to give up the best spot on the boat. And I think that the Wilderness Systems Attack is one of the Picassos of kayak fishing. And it's a Picasso with bird shit right in the middle of it because of that little square thing where there's a damn drink holder that actually turns into a place where water pools up. It turns into this mosquito larva haven. And that's all could have been avoided by just doing a true kayak fishing specific design. So even though I'm kind of skipping Jackson under the bus a little bit, I do have to say it's not because of truly just where they are, but it's the delta between where they came from and where they are. They were the ones that listened to anglers the most. They were the ones that took the advice. And I was in the board meetings with the companies saying, we got to do this to catch up to Jackson. We got to do this to beat Jackson. There was this beat Jackson thing for 2 years. I don't know what happened. So if you're listening, Jackson, find your mojo again, man. Grow your kayak fishing pair back and start doing what you used to do. Stop vanilla and down everything to the point that you don't have anything. So I'll get off that soapbox, but
Well, really quick, I had a question for you.
I think I was the one to man up and call out an actual company, and you just took the Alibaba route. That's what I agree. Alibaba by far is the worst. But if I'm going to say of the brands that are out there, and I can tell you this, there are pro staffers on their team that are going to publicly disagree with this, but privately, I've heard the frustration from them as well. So start listening to your pro staff. Start listening to your anglers. Start listening to the people that do this, and bring back your innovative spirit. Start taking risks again. Start doing the things that you need to do to not be on the downturn. So that's my kind of assessment of manufacturers.
Real quick, got a question for you. So you saw the, I don't know, rise and fall, call it what you wish. Why? What's your speculation on what happened, right? That's a pretty big disparity between you were leading the way to no one really, like you only have two boats that are kicking butt.
One thing you're going to learn about business, if you really dig into it deep enough, is there's this thing called the founder's fallacy. And the founder of the company, and I fall under this with KBF because I'm going through it right now, is that you get burnt out and you get fatigued both spiritually, mentally, financially, and then you need one life event, like I had with the divorce, to make it to where those balls that you were juggling, you can't. You ever seen somebody drop one ball while they're juggling? Not really. Only if they mean to, like if they're just kicking a ball out. But for the most part, if you're juggling 7, 8 balls and you drop one of them, you drop them all, right? And so I think what happened is, and Eric Jackson is a really good friend of mine. You're going to see us fishing together in a YouTube video in a week. Love the guy to death. But EJ is like that cartoon with the dog and it's like squirrel, and he's over here. And I think he chased a lot of different rainbows. And I think that when he started chasing the FLW thing and trying to be a professional in the bass boat world, I think that the inmates ran the asylum, if you will. And he was already a inmate himself when he was there. But I just think that they lost leadership and direction. Money became a problem. And I think when you get into a stress mode, it's very hard to be anything other than in survival mode.
Sure.
And then, of course, Eric left the company, founded Apex, and did that whole thing. So that the culmination of all the things I'm talking about was very public. So it's not like I'm making something up or sharing something that if you even got a slight bit of insight into this community or industry, you already know what I'm talking about. But I think that's the biggest part. The thing I'm most excited about is that I don't know how long it's been. So it would be unfair to say she's had enough time to quote unquote fix it. But his daughter, Emily Jackson, who's a world-class world champion whitewater kayaker, and is also a brilliant marketing mind and is also a fisherman. She's an angler. Not just like she does it, she's good at it. She's finished in the top 10 of every KBF event she's ever fished. If she applied herself to kayak fishing, she would be one of the names that you know when you say kayak fishing. Because of her being put into a position of leadership at the company, I think that you're going to see a major turnaround. I think that you're going to be very excited about some of the things that are happening. It was public recently that a good friend of mine, longtime friend of mine, Jameson Redding, just departed Jackson as the brand manager. Had other options in life. He's chasing the TV show thing like I did. His dad is about to retire from his business. So he's not leaving because of being disgruntled or any of that other stuff. He just was leaving because life changed for him. And so I think if they find the right brand manager or if Emily brings that role into her level of responsibilities, I think you're going to see a major turnaround in the Jackson posture, if that makes sense,
Sure.
And again, I'm not trying to crap on anybody. I want to give credit where credit's due. Not, I'm biased in the places that I'm biased, but I address those and talk about them. It has been a very humbling experience that Tyler believed in me enough from Big Adventures to say, yeah, we can sponsor you and you can still paddle all these other boats and be objective about them. Because it's probably been the best 2 years of my kayak fishing career on having a grasp on what's out there. Rather than listening to the noise about certain things, I'm actually out there experiencing it myself. In fact, I had a gentleman call me who showed up to the headquarters today. Hey, I want to try some boats out. He shows up. He's like 6'4", like 350 pounds, built like a brick, house. And He's like, what boat do you want to put me in? And I said, I'm going to put you in the New Canoe Unlimited, bro, because I think that's the first boat you should consider. And then we'll back it down from there, and then we're going to put you in the New Canoe Unlimited. We're going to put you in the Bonafide SS-127, and then maybe even the RS-117, depending on where your budget's at. But I think that, and then we're going to put him in the Old Town MK-106, and he's actually out right down the hill from the KVF headquarters right now trying out some different boats. And so I do believe that we've gotten away from the try before you buy thing. We've gotten away from doing really good demos. And I think that the biggest angler dissatisfaction that comes from boats is buying the wrong boat based on misinformation. You get these pro staff wolf packs and it's usually like the people that just got put on the pro staff in like the last 2 years. They're still green. They don't know how to be a pro. They're trying to do their best to represent the brand. And every time somebody asks a question about a particular kayak, and this drives me. If I had one big pet peeve, the biggest pet peeve that I have in kayak fishing, I want you guys to listen to this one. If somebody says on a group or on their Facebook page, hey guys, I've been researching kayaks for about 2 years, and I've narrowed it down to the Hobie Passport R and the, Crescent light tackle. What do you guys think? I think you should try the Jackson, whatever, bro. Stop. And then they go blow a trumpet, and then all the rest of that wolf pack of new pros come in, and they dogpile on the post to say, this guy's going to try to buy something other than our boat. Let's change his mind. And you just muddy the waters. If they didn't consider your boat in the 2-year process of narrowing it down to the boats that they think they want, do a better job of marketing your boat so that as people are doing their research, yours is one of the ones that they consider. Don't wait until someone else is already somewhat made up their mind. And, and I'll say this, you throw a couple names out there. I'm going to throw one out there. I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, and, so be it. It's not as bad as it used to be, but that was the MO of the Vibe crew for a long time. Hey, I'm thinking about a Wilderness Systems tarpon or a native whatever, or I'm thinking about an Old Town this or a Hobie this. You should try the Vibe Sea Ghost. You should try the Vibe. It's like, dude, they didn't even list your brand or a boat that's even comparable to anything that Vibe makes. And yet you're jumping in there. And so to me, it's been very refreshing for me to be able to actually have firsthand experience to be able to say what I think to these anglers instead of speculating like everybody else. And so that's been the major reason that I did it. But yeah, I just think that that's one of my big pet peeves. If somebody says that, say, hey, based on the criteria, I think you should maybe consider a couple of other boats before you make your final decision. That's fine. But just jumping in there, and it's very obvious. You jump in there, the next person's a Vibe person, the next person's a Vibe person. It's like you went to a secret forum and said, hey, guys, there's a post. We need to take it over. Stop. It's annoying. And I've been part of pro staffs that have done it. Wilderness Systems used to do it. Bonafide did it for a little while in the beginning. Everybody kind of does it, but stop. If they didn't narrow down your boat to their final 2 and they said they'd done a couple years worth of research, either provide them some input on the boats that they're considering or just shut up. You don't actually have to. Hey, by the way, this is another insight that I'll share with you. You don't actually have to comment on everything on the internet.
What?
I literally had a person the other day who I'd never spoken to them, didn't know who they were, tagged me in some post, and I lurk more now on Facebook than I engage. But they tagged me in a post, and I responded. And then the guy constantly wanted to be combative with what I was saying. And I was like, that's fine, man. You got your opinion. Here's mine. We're not going to engage in an exercise where you try to prove yourself right on my platform or I try to prove you wrong. I don't care. But then the guy kept on and was popping up in different places, starting to contradict everything that I said, went into my YouTube videos and started commenting on my videos. And I actually just searched the person's name in Facebook. And there was a post every 6 to 10 minutes for hours on end. And so in that case, that person's not even fishing. Because if you're commenting on social media 14 hours straight, every 5 or 6 minutes, you're probably in a basement somewhere just doing that. That's all you do. So kind of consider the source when you take intel from people about something that's going to influence a purchasing decision. The status of the industry. What do you think about growth trends? Are we trending up? Are we trending down? Are we flat? Like where are we at as an industry?
Yeah, I feel like there is this perception. Like I've only been in this 2.5 years, Chad. So with 12 years experience, I don't have a basis for a lot, but I started my channel back, in the middle of COVID. And so, man, it was hot. Everybody and their brother was trying out kayak fishing because they needed to be 6 feet apart from someone else. And well, what better way to do that than get out in nature? What's even better than that? Get out in the boat where you don't get next to people anyways. And so this thing was hot. And so I put all my cards in. I was like, I'm gonna try to do this bad boy. And so, as everyone knows, it went hot, 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 hot. And then I don't know if it was recently, but we're looking at the last, 6 months or so. And there might be this perception that, oh, kayak fishing is dying, right? And so people are at the ICAST and we're like, oh, well, this boat manufacturer wasn't there. And this boat manufacturer wasn't there. This must mean insert your own narrative. And then you got content creators out there. Is kayak fishing dead? The decline of kayak fishing, this, that, and the other. And so there could be this perception simply based off of, one data point. Hey, Hobie wasn't an ICAST and neither was this company, and neither was this company. That must mean they're not there because they don't have money, or it must not be worth it, or they must not be worth investing in. And so it must be dying. That is the conclusion. And we talked about this a little bit off the show. But what is really happening, I believe, in the state of kind of kayak fishing, it's still rocking and rolling, in my opinion. I see more, and this is kind of subjective, I see more kayaks out on the lakes that I fish more than I ever have, even 2 years ago when everyone was buying them. I mean, they're everywhere. And there is a secondary kayak fishing market right now. And I know for me, I haven't bought a single one of my kayaks MSRP from the store. Just didn't do it. Got them both over the last 2 years. My Native Slayer Propel 10, drove 2 hours to Pittsburgh to pick that bad boy up. And my Bonafide P127 drove 2 hours to Dayton to pick that up. And so people aren't, if you're just simply going off of sales, and we can talk about this a little bit because I sent you some market research, which is fascinating. So I'm looking really forward to getting your getting your opinion on that, because it was giving projections for the market through 2027. And it was done 2 years ago. So we're kind of right in the middle of it. We're going to see if they missed. I think all these deductions and narratives people are pulling from just a little bit of information, and drawing the conclusion that kayak fishing is dying, I think it's incorrect. It's false.
So I'm going to give you my insight on it, and then we'll both talk about what we consider one of the better innovations at the end. So anytime you have a industry and you have an industry leader and you have an industry platform, okay, meaning the place where the industry gathers, like you do with ICAST, certain inferences are going to be drawn when at ICAST there is a reduced posture of kayak fishing presence. And then there's the absence of the leader. Okay. And for years, and maybe even incorrectly so, Hobie has been dubbed the leader. And the only reason I say incorrectly so is because the true leader in plastic water vessel sales, by all of the research that you sent me and the research that I've found over the years myself, and stuff that I've also participated in through the Outdoor Industry Alliance and some other things, Leisure Trends is the company that does it, and has been that there's a misrepresentation of what a fishing kayak is. We talked about this offline, and I'm going to talk to the folks here a little bit about it, but not go as crazy in depth. If you've ever noticed when you go to Bass Pro Shop or Dick's or any of your major retailers that sell kayaks, even if they're called a fishing kayak, they put them in their camping section. The reason that they put them in the camping section is they're trying to avoid ever having that category move into the requirement to collect FET or federal excise tax on it, like they would if they started calling those things fishing products, right? Especially if an electric motor is attached to it. And again, that's a whole separate discussion that we'll get into. But the problem is, if you take a company like Bass Pro Shop, who owns, or Johnny Morris's collective group of enterprises, there's a company called Tracker. Tracker makes the Bass Tracker, and they have a division called Tracker Plastics. And in all of the research that I've ever found, Tracker Plastics has always been absent from their measurement. All the Alibaba brands are absent from the measurement. So when you look at the size of the market and you consider that what I think is the absentee leader in total sales being Tracker Plastics, who makes the Ascend series and makes the boats for Bass Pro Shop. And then you take into account that you're also missing some significantly popular boats like Brooklyn Kayak, Lightning, Vibe, Hoodoo, Hammerhead. There's probably a bunch more because, again, you can simply order a container of those boats, throw your name on it, bada boom, bada bing, shake it up, throw some Yahtzee dice, and you're a kayak company. That doesn't truly represent what the market is. And so I think what's happened also is that there's been a somewhat of a move away from specialty into big box, and big box does a really good job of not reporting correctly because they're very competitive with the other big box. And so when you lose the best reporting for the number one selling brand, it skews the numbers. And so on paper, Pelican International is the number one selling company in that category. And it's probably because their price point boat is also named a catch, and it's marketed and positioned as a fishing kayak, so it counts. A lot of their other boats don't count, so they're actually bigger than the studies say. Hobie has been sitting right there at number 2 in total sales, unit sales, and dollars for 22 years. Okay. So in my mind, Hobie is number 1, and they've been number 1 because those other companies are shell gaming and they're servicing kind of a different market, but they're still relevant. They're gateway products. They count, if you will. Right. But Hobie's been in that number 1 position. And then what's happened with Hobie is that Hobie hit every category in my acronym: stability, comfort, riggability, reliability, affordability. Again, for what you get. Affordability doesn't mean cheap. It just means for what you get, is it worth it? Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Performance. They performed the best as a pedal drive. They did motor well because it had a big hole that wasn't a displacement hole, wasn't quite a planing hole, but it motorized better than a lot of the other boats out there. And for the discriminating angler that wanted the best, Hobie satisfied that criteria. Where they beat everybody's brakes off for years was the service after the sale, the dealer satisfaction, and how they handle warranties. Now, I'm going to talk about those a little bit because it's worth diving into. Warranty is probably the biggest hot button item out there. So this is actually just a perfect segue into talking about this. When you have a problem with your F-150, you don't call Ford in Detroit or wherever they're actually at. You don't pick up your phone if your Tesla didn't charge overnight and call Elon Musk. But we have this weird thing in the kayak industry where kayak companies have tried hard enough to satisfy individuals that they've created this expectation that they should. And because of warranty issues where if the dealer took care of the customer, they could count on the manufacturer to take care of them. So therefore, you only had to interact with your dealer. The customer satisfaction has gone down in both categories, and I'll tell you why. Because for years and years and years, like, for example, when I owned my shop, I would make the warranty call. I would replace the boat out of inventory. Then I would reach out to the manufacturer and say, hey, I need a replacement for this boat on my next shipment, yada, yada. That customer never missed a day. It was seamless for them. But I would do that because I knew that the manufacturer would take care of me.
Right.
What's happened particularly at Hobie, and it's happening at several brands, but because the one with Hobie is the biggest hot button item out there, is they're getting hit on 2 fronts. And I don't envy this position. And I also don't root for failure in anybody in this space because it's symbolic of there being a problem in our industry. You hit on the fact that there's a secondary sales market. And I will say that I think that the sales seem to be declining or even flat, not because they are, but because we had this overinflation of the market during COVID. Everybody with a little extra bit of money and a little extra time on their hands and could work remotely jumped into fishing kayak. But after they've now gone back to work and they got to show up to the office and they're tripping over their $6,000 investment in their garage, and their wife or their life partner is complaining about it being there because she's parking in the driveway and stuff like that. Those things are going back on the market. And a couple of things are happening. Kayak anglers who've been in the game for a long time are seeing these sales pop up, and they're gobbling up those boats, knowing that that person is selling it at a significant fire sale price, and they know they can pick it up and set on it and upsell it. I've seen that a number of times.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's one thing that's being perpetuated. And the other thing that's happening is there's just an excess of inventory on the market from people selling used boats. that being coupled with the influx of more Alibaba boats, more of your boutique brands, and then more of the big box entrance into the market with their own brands, it seems like it's flat. But when you look at sales of fishing kayaks and you don't count Tracker Plastics, your data is already skewed because Tracker Plastics is one of the biggest in the game.
By how much?
I know by a lot, bigger than Pelican International. And
So
I
give me a
know the
percentage.
number, 15% bigger.
Okay. Yeah.
They're bigger. They're bigger than Pelican International. Bigger than Pelican International is bigger than Hobie, if that makes sense. The delta between them and second, who the research shows is number one, and number 2 is bigger. And I think that that's problematic because when you're trying to make decisions on the size of an industry and you're not counting the biggest and you're not understanding why they're the biggest, here's why they're the biggest. I can't walk into a specialty retail shop and walk out of that kayak shop in most cases without dropping significant dollars. I could walk into Bass Pro Shop, Cabela's, Shields, Dick's, apply for their store credit card, get their rewards points, and walk out of that store ready to kayak fish with $0 spent, and I owe $89 next month, right? So the value proposition for the low barrier to entry for a lot of people has accelerated those sales. And most of the Alibaba brand advocates are also hip to that. They're setting up pay now, pay later in their stores with Affirm and PayPal financing and things like that. And so the traditional sales channel, the traditional sales funnel, get them interested in kayak fishing, bring them to your website, go to the dealer locator, go to the dealer, walk out with a fishing kayak, is the most disrupted it's ever been. But that also means that the market is healthy because, in my opinion, these other subcategory markets wouldn't be thriving because the weakest cells in a disease are the first to die, right? Through a process in our body called autophagy, it kills the weakest cells first. So if you think about an industry as a whole, the industry would not be healthy enough to support new growth, and those newest companies would die first.
Right.
If the industry sucked. So the fact that there are Brooklyn Kayaks and Hoodoos and Van Hooks and, I can't name them all. That just shows that the industry still worth investing in, and those people are selling those boats. And not all of them are counted in the data, both in the study that you shared with me and the number of studies that I've seen over the years. So I think kayak fishing is the healthiest it's ever been, but I think we're in for a 2-year right sizing from what we went through with this crazy spike during COVID. And I think it's just going to be one of those things that's going to have some casualties. One of the biggest casualties out there is the confidence in Hobie as a brand. And it sucks because that trickles down to everybody.
Sure.
Right? There's people that think because I do a series and the BOS is a competition with me and all that, that I'm somehow rooting for Hobie's demise. And that's not the case because I'm in kayak fishing. I make a living kayak fishing. So bad things in kayak fishing are bad for business for me. And so I hope, and I'm fairly confident that Hobie is going to get it figured out, but it's going to be a reverse engineered process because right now you've got kind of like an imploding situation that's happening. Last year was the first time in recorded history that Hobie discounted that I ever saw in my life. In fact, they were very, very opposed to it. Well, this year they discounted again. And the first time that they discounted, not every dealer got on board with it. And this time I think it was across the board. Everybody was squawking about it, posting about it, talking about it. And when I look at the numbers of what they sold that boat for, I know what margins are. I know what freight costs to get the boats from California to a dealer somewhere in the Midwest or Northeast or even the Southeast. I know that most of those retailers are dumping those boats to get rid of inventory and to just recoup their investment. But that means they're not making money. So that means they're not going to be successful. It also means that if they had that hard of a time selling the inventory that they bought the year before, even at a discount, they're going to be less likely to place a very robust order for their preseason, which starts in August in this industry. And so that's going to be a problem. It's going to be a problem for the fact that now you took this snowball that Hobie had going, and now that snowball is melting. It's very hard to get momentum going back uphill once you start rolling downhill, even a little bit. And so I hope they figure it out. I think that they legitimately, and I've said it in a number of videos, I think that the links could have been a game changer if they further invested in that concept, if they further invested in that process. I think inflatable is one of the categories in the future. And I think if they had taken that iTrack concept a little further, made it a little more durable on the surface, on the top part of the deck, and offered even maybe a 14 and a half, bigger version for bigger people, that boat could have destroyed it. It could have crushed it. But the links, because it was a foam filled, different type of injection molding process, I felt like it could be potentially the future of how boats are manufactured. And now, because of that downturn in their demand and those issues, it's going to slow their innovation. And what I loved about Hobie's innovation is it pushed everybody else. I don't know if it's not pushing everybody else, because now what I think happens is people are vying for the title. And I'm going to get some for saying this, but I'm just going to tell you how it is. You can disagree with me if you want to, and there's nothing wrong with being wrong. Sometimes you're just going to be wrong. But here's the situation. I've been in this industry for a long time. I've been kayak fishing. It'll be 30 years in November. I've been in the professional side of this industry for almost 2 decades, and everybody conceded that Hobie was number one.
Right.
Like, it was just Hobie's number one. This is the price point that they're at. We're not going to challenge that price point, and we're all going to compete down here for number 2 through whatever. And now you've got Big Adventures emboldened to cross that big price threshold with the Titan X. You've got Old Town knocking on the door with the Autopilot series for the last couple of years. But remember, they stayed right below that threshold. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you guys this is how it works. For a long time, they conceded. Hobie's number one. Their boat's $5,000. We're going to stay here around $4,000, even with our flagship boat. So here's what the real problem that I see is. Not problem. The status of the industry is warranty has become a big issue for Hobie, both with cracked hulls, seized drives, particularly the 360 drive. And most of the people that I talk to, dealers, users, pro staffers, everybody along the way, there's at least some level of dissatisfaction at every level, at the dealer level, the reps, the consumers. We talked about our buddy Alex. We're not going to go too hard in that tangent, because Alex is actually going to come here in November around the time of the Knucklehead thing, and we're going to collab. We're going to do some videos. We're going to do a UFC style weigh-in for all the popular fishing kayaks and say, this is what they say on the website. This is what they actually weigh. We're going to actually go out and do some weight capacity testing. We're going to get some sandbags and some metal plates, and we're going to test these boats with the weight that the manufacturers say that they are. Not the weight that the angler says they are, but the weight that is actually, certified weights.
Huh.
And so I'm looking forward to doing that. And then we're going to flip some boats and play the game that Alex loves to play. I think he almost creates a misrepresentation of how good he actually is by some of his antics. And I get it. It's part of it. But the guy's really actually smart about the industry. And he gets it. And he's done enough of trying all the different boats that he gets feedback from everybody. And because he's not a pro staffer, he's got 0 F's given and can do whatever he wants to. That's a unique and kind of a refreshing position. And I really think it's a role that we need. And so he does a good job of filling that void. But the problems with Hobie are indicative of that there's something amiss from a leadership standpoint. Like, I think that somebody could identify these things and take corrective measures. And going into the second year of having the same problems, I'm not sure that that's happening. And I really hope that they figure it out, because I know they moved to Mexico, which is going to allow them to streamline their manufacturing, get more profitable, and if they're more profitable, that means they have more money to put in innovation. They've already demonstrated that they're leaders in innovation. So if they can get more profitable to where they can reinvest that money in innovation, make an effort to take back that lead position, we then have a 3-horse race. And we've not had a 3-horse race in a long time. And here's what happens as anglers when brands compete. When they compete, we win.
Right.
So as much as I'm affiliated with one brand over the other one, I'm a fan of competition, because competition with KBF made me make KBF better. Competition with Hobie has made these other brands better. But now that these other brands are challenging for the top position, now that Native's got the Titan X that's knocking on the door of, is this the pro angler killer? I think that's why the NAR got so much blowback from what it could be versus what it is, because it was supposed to be something that gave the pro angler a run for its money, and it really didn't. But the Titan X has got a real shot at it. I also think that the EPDL has got a real shot at it. I personally disagree with and agree with some of the takes out there. I understand that people say, oh, it should have worked with all the other drives, the boats that are out there, and you can't always do that. So I understand I understand Old Town's position on that. I think where Old Town made a bit of a miss is that they put that PDL, the EPDL, on a platform that wasn't the horse that they had put their saddle on for the last 3 years. I think it should have been an extension of the Sportsman Series, because the Sportsman Series was killing it. And I think that if there is a miss in that, I think that that's the case. But I also think that they might be smarter than me, and they understand that it needs to appeal to a broader audience, big water being saltwater, and also still appealing to freshwater anglers, and that maybe that when the story is completely told, Old Town gets to say, ha ha, we were right. I don't know. I personally don't usually safety up, but I probably would have safetied up if I was Old Town in this case. I would have done the Sportsman EPDL 136 or something like that, right? I would have tried to make it retroactive, but I understand how hard those things are.
Right.
But I do think from an innovation standpoint, it just shows that Old Town, one of the biggest players in the game right now, and Native, always been one of the biggest players in the game, are really jockeying for position to be that new number one brand, which then makes it even more problematic for Hobie taking back over the number one slot. And I think that if there is and again, we're doing state of the union for kayak fishing here, guys. So I'm covering everything.
Right.
If I think there's a bigger issue, the biggest issue that Hobie faces is not consumer confidence. Let's be real. We as consumers and as a biomass of humans have a really short memory. You can lose our loyalty pretty quick. We can also gain it back pretty quick, right? So consumer confidence isn't the hardest road that Hobie has to travel. It's not the hardest row they have to row. It's dealer confidence. Because what has made Hobie what it is their protection of their dealers, their protection of their brand, and their maintaining of that price point and preserving that margin for the dealers who invest so heavily in those more expensive kayaks. That's been eroded by the warranty servicing issues. It's been eroded by the posture of moving into more big box. And I think that's going to be the biggest hurdle that Hobie has to overcome. And again, I hope they do it. I hope they figure it out. I don't think going into big box is the solution. I understand that if you are hemorrhaging money and you can go to a company like Shields or Bass Pro Shop or somebody like that and they can write a big check, I think that that's a short-term solution for a long-term problem. And then the ticking time bomb that I'm worried about is if you buy your Hobie from Brad at Sunjammers down in Panama City Beach and you have a problem, Brad at Sunjammers is going to take care of you. That's just how it is. If you buy your Hobie at Fish USA in PA, they're going to take care of you. If you buy it at Appomattox River Company in Virginia, in Farmville, they're going to take care of you. I could go on, and I'm not dissing anybody by not naming them. Those are just a few of the ones that came to mind right off the top of my head. They're going to take care of you. If you buy your boat from Dick's or from Shields, and you go back in there and say, hey, this happened, they're going to look at you deer in the headlights. They're going to shrug their shoulders, and then you're going to call Hobie, and they're going to tell you to go to a real dealer. And so that's the other problem.
Right.
And again, I'm telling you, this is happening. That's the real problem that the dealers have, is not only are they losing the sales to these big box stores, but they're also expected to carry the burden of handling the servicing and handling the warranty issues for a boat they didn't make their margin on.
Right.
That's a net negative, because it cost them the sale, and now they're having to do the servicing, so it's a double whammy. So a lot of dealers are pulling out of servicing warranty, and that was Hobie's major competitive advantage for years, is that the dealers were so behind the brand. Every store that you walked into had the little pedaling man, with the little foot pedals. They had the Hobie signage everywhere. Hobies were always in the premium position in the stores, and I'm seeing some of that not be the case anymore. And again, guys, listen, you want to chime in and say, oh, he's a Hobie hater. You can say whatever you want to. I'm legitimately just giving you real shit of what's going on in our industry right now, and not trying to shovel crap on it, but also not trying, to sugarcoat it. And every brand has had these issues. Bonafide had some major issues during the initial merger with Big Adventures, because there was a weird dynamic of figuring out how does Bonafide fit into the brand structure of, Native and Liquid Logic and all that good stuff. And it took a while to sort it out. And there was some subpar quality boats put out because they did it different at Big Adventures than Bonafide did it when they were in South Carolina. And it just took a minute to work some of that stuff out. So I'm hoping that the big layoff of a big part of Hobie's workforce is a big part of this, is that there's not the right voices there, and that they find those voices to steer the ship in the right direction. I hope that they focus on getting dealer confidence back first, because with dealer confidence, you can build back consumer confidence. But if you just get consumer confidence back first and you focus on that, you're not necessarily going to get your dealers back, right? So we've got to get back to holding dealers accountable for warranty issues. If you buy your truck from a dealership, you go to that dealer to get your service. You don't call Ford if you wake up one morning in your F-150. You don't text Elon Musk and say, hey, my Tesla's not charging. You go to your dealer. And I think that dealers who make a bigger margin on the boat than the manufacturers do have a responsibility to take care of you. That's the purchase agreement you made. Hey, I'm buying this product from you. If I have a problem with it, I need your help in fixing it. And I think if we can do that, the dealers then hold the manufacturers accountable, the better the consumer experience gets better. Manufacturers, for the most part, aren't geared to deal with individual consumers. They're geared to deal with dealers. Their customers are the dealers, and the dealers' customers are you, right? But again, trying to chase customer satisfaction, too many brands have tried to take care of the customers. They do the best they can because the national sales manager happens to answer the phone because he's got the time, and he starts the process, and then he gets slammed with his real job, taking care of dealers, and then the ball gets dropped, and Billy Bob doesn't hear from you in 3 weeks, and it's like, what the hell? But Billy Bob should have gone through the dealer. The dealer should have made the call, convey that to the manufacturer. The manufacturer says, okay, it's a warranty. Cut out the serial number, destroy the boat, send us proof of destruction. We'll put a new boat on the next shipment to your store. Bada boom, bada bing. That's how it's supposed to work. And that's probably the biggest reason that you've got to take a hard look at this Alibaba boat kind of thing, because the initial purchase is very attractive. I get it. I'll go a little further than Daren and say that it's probably a 2-season purchase more than like a 1-season purchase. You're going to see some degradation in season 1, but you're probably going to get a good 2 seasons out of most of these boats, and several seasons if you're only fishing, once or twice a month or something like that. But the biggest issue is if you have a problem, by and large, even if you've got a good dealer, that dealer's ordering a container of these boats that is coming from China or Vietnam or wherever. And let's say they sell out all their boats, and you go in there and you say, hey, I cracked my hull. They got to get another container full of those boats before they're going to be able to fill your warranty. And I've seen it where people have waited a year and a half on some of those brands to get a replace. I've 100% seen it, because here's what else happens. By and large, the next container coming in is already pre-sold because these companies are split in the market. So you might have to wait 2-3 containers because they can't just wedge another one in there, right? You can't just strap it to the top. For the most part, these brands are ordering these boats. And the one that's probably done the best at it of all is Vibe. Vibe has actually sold recently. So I think that the new ownership is probably going to invest in, kind of improving that. But out of all of the Alibaba brands, I think they probably did the best job of kind of even getting some of their own designs, even though I think their designs were still, cake decorator of things that other brands had. They did the best job of having enough inventory to where if you had a problem, they could take care of their dealer to take care of you quicker than, say most of the rest of them. I really do hope that that this warranty thing gets figured out, and that the dealer satisfaction thing gets figured out, because if it doesn't, that's a long-term problem for Hobie. It's not a a short-term fix. I hope Jackson gets that fire in the belly again. And, I'm really proud of what New Canoe, Feel Free, Old Town, Big Adventures, both Bonafide, and there's stuff that's coming out that I'm excited about that I can't talk about because, I can't talk about it yet. But, not only is there like the new river and then the SKF, and then there's like just there's a list for, several years of projects that have been greenlighted. And I'm excited about that. And I'm hoping that Old Town continues to do what they do.
Well, there you have it, folks. Chad absolutely killed it with the state of the industry. But if there's a topic you believe that we should have covered that may be a hot topic in your opinion or something that's trending, please let us know in the comments below. We'll do more of these into the future. But man, if you want more content like this, I know Chad is launching his new podcast, so go check that out wherever you stream your podcast. I also have a podcast called Kayak Fishing Obsessed. I'd love for you to be a part of. And if you're new to kayak angling, I have the perfect series for you. Beginner to amateur kayak angler in 3 videos. You can check out that playlist right there. Thanks for watching. See ya.